I caught my wife cheating with her assistant, and, surprisingly, it ended up earning me a promotion. I never imagined that one moment of betrayal could completely change the course of my life. It started like any other day. I had no idea that the woman I loved and trusted more than anything would be hiding something so massive from me. The truth came crashing down, and I was not prepared for what happened next. One afternoon, I found myself at the office, digging through emails. There was nothing out of the ordinary until I stumbled upon a string of messages between my wife and her assistant. Messages that painted a shocking picture. As I sat there, reading every word, I felt as though the world around me was crumbling. My wife, the woman I married, the woman I built my life with, had betrayed me. The affair was right there in front of me. But what happened after that is not something you would expect. That betrayal didn't destroy me. It set in motion a chain of events that, oddly enough, would end up benefiting me in ways I could never have imagined. Life, or so I thought, was pretty straightforward. I had a wife whom I trusted with everything, a career I was slowly growing in, and an ordinary life that didn't seem to need any major changes. Our marriage, like any relationship, had its fair share of ups and downs, but we worked through them. We were in our 30s, both of us building our careers, and I genuinely believed we had everything we needed. I was content, or at least I thought I was. My wife, Emma, had recently taken on a new role in her company. She was working as an assistant to a high-level executive, a position that I was proud of. She worked long hours, was constantly on the go, and seemed more energized than ever. But there was something else in the air, a change I could not put my finger on. At first, I chalked it up to her new position. Maybe the stress of a new job, the pressure of being in the corporate world was affecting her. She started getting home later, sometimes not until the early morning hours. I didn't think much of it. After all, she was working hard to advance, and I had my own demanding job. There were nights when she would be so tired that we'd barely have time for a proper conversation. But something about her mood started to shift. It wasn't the usual tiredness from work, but more of an emotional distance, something that felt different. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just a phase, or maybe I was overthinking things. But then, things began to change in ways I could no longer ignore. Emma became more secretive about her phone. At first, it was small things, a quick glance at her screen when I walked into the room, swiftly locking it when I got too close. I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was being too paranoid. She'd assure me it was nothing, that it was just work-related stuff that she didn't want me to get involved in. But the secrecy only grew. I couldn't deny that something was off. My gut told me there was more to the story. I wanted to believe that my wife, the woman I had built a life with, wasn't capable of anything underhanded. But as days passed, the unease continued to grow. My suspicions about the growing distance, the secrecy, and the late nights only deepened. I tried to trust her. I really did. But the nagging feeling in the back of my mind kept whispering that there was something I wasn't seeing. That feeling eventually turned into something I could no longer ignore, what I had feared most. The betrayal, I would later discover, wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. It wasn't just a fleeting moment. No, this was something far worse, something that would shake the very foundation of my life and change everything. The truth about what had been going on behind my back would soon come crashing down, and it was going to tear apart everything I thought I knew about my wife, our marriage, and the future I had envisioned. In the early years of our marriage, Emma and I had built something solid. We didn't have everything, but we had each other. We were partners, equal in every sense. We made decisions together, from big purchases to long-term life plans. We were both ambitious, but in our own ways. I was content with my job, comfortable, working my way up, but nothing extraordinary. Emma, on the other hand, always had bigger dreams. She was always the more ambitious one, driven to make her mark in the corporate world. She wanted more than the traditional 9-to-5, and I supported her in every way I could. When Emma got her promotion, I could see how much it meant to her. She was excited about the possibilities, the new challenges, and the recognition she had worked so hard for. I was proud of her, and I showed it. But with her new position came more responsibility, more pressure, and the inevitable late nights at the office. I was happy for her success, but as the weeks went by, I started to feel the strain. The late nights became more frequent. We spent less time together. It wasn't a dramatic change, more of a gradual shift, but it started to feel like something was missing. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was working hard to prove herself in a new role, and I understood that. I reassured myself that it was just a phase, something temporary. We were both busy, and I knew we could get back on track once things settled. But as time went on, things didn't seem to settle. Emma's mood seemed different, more distant. She started spending more time on her phone, texting late at night, and becoming defensive when I asked about her day. When I tried to talk to her, she'd tell me that work was stressful and that she just needed time to decompress. I wanted to believe her. I had to. The change wasn't just in her actions. It was in the way she spoke to me, in the way she looked at me. The affection we once had seemed to be replaced by irritation. Arguments, which had once been rare, started to become more frequent. And when we did spend time together, it felt like I was trying to reach someone who wasn't quite there. The emotional connection that had once existed between us felt like it was slipping away, and I didn't know how to fix it. I thought maybe it was just a rough patch, but deep down, I had a sinking feeling that there was something more, something I couldn't see, but that was eating away at the core of our marriage. I tried to talk to Emma about it, but she was always quick to shut down the conversation. "I'm just stressed," she'd say. "Work is crazy. I'm just not in the mood right now." I understood the pressure of her job, but something in my gut kept telling me that there was more to it than that. It wasn't just work. It couldn't be. The secrets were building, slowly but surely. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could ignore the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It wasn't until one fateful evening, when everything changed, that I would finally have the truth handed to me in a way that I couldn't deny. It was a Saturday afternoon when it all came crashing down. I had been busy with work, keeping myself occupied while Emma spent the day out, as she often did. At first, I didn't think anything of it. She was busy, and I had learned to give her space. But something about that day felt different. I had a feeling in the pit of my stomach, a nagging sense that I couldn't shake. My instincts had been telling me for months that there was something I was missing, something that didn't quite add up. It wasn't like Emma to be away for the entire day without so much as a text. We'd always kept in touch, even if it was just a quick message to check in. But that day, nothing. And it wasn't until I noticed her phone lying on the kitchen counter that things started to unravel. Her phone had been charging when I walked into the kitchen. I had never been one to snoop, and I'd always respected her privacy. But this time, I couldn't help myself. Something inside me pushed me to pick it up. I had no idea what I was looking for, but the feeling that I was missing something important made me unable to resist. At first, I thought about just sending her a quick message to check in, something casual. But as my hand hovered over the screen, I saw the notification pop up. It was a message from someone I didn't recognize. The text wasn't a friendly, work-related note. It was personal. It was intimate. "Can't wait to see you later. I'll make sure it's worth the wait, just like always." The message sent a chill down my spine. My heart dropped into my stomach as I realized what I was seeing. The sinking feeling intensified. I scrolled through the messages, heart racing, unsure of what I was about to uncover. And then it hit me. There were more messages. Dozens of them. It wasn't a one-time thing. This was ongoing. The conversation between Emma and this person was intimate, flirtatious, and the language left little to the imagination. They had been seeing each other for months. I couldn't breathe. My mind was racing. I couldn't focus on anything except the words on the screen. They had shared intimate plans. There were references to meetings at hotels, secret rendezvous, and moments of passion. The betrayal was clear, and it was devastating. It was hard to comprehend. How could this be happening? How could Emma, the woman I trusted, the one I thought I knew so well, be doing this behind my back? I scrolled back through the messages, desperately trying to make sense of it. The messages were filled with compliments, promises, and plans for the future. Emma had clearly been hiding this relationship for a long time, and as I read each word, it felt like a dagger to my chest. The words seemed to confirm every suspicion I had been feeling for months. It wasn't just the late nights. It wasn't just the distance. It was the affair. The more I read, the more it became clear that Emma had been leading a double life. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was emotional. She had found someone else, someone who made her feel seen, heard, and desired in a way I had not been able to. And worst of all, she had lied to me. For months, she had been hiding this secret, keeping me in the dark while pretending everything was fine. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My whole world, my marriage, the trust one had placed in her, was crumbling before my eyes. And yet, in the midst of this storm of emotions, there was a strange clarity. It wasn't just that Emma had cheated. It was that she had been so careless, so confident in her lies, that she hadn't even bothered to hide it properly. As I sat there with her phone in my hands, my mind was spinning. The betrayal cut deep, but there was something else that surged within me as well. Anger. Betrayal was one thing, but this was different. She had been so willing to deceive me. I wasn't sure how much longer I could live with this knowledge, with the weight of her lies hanging over me. In that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her right away. I wasn't going to let my emotions dictate my actions. Instead, I would keep the phone. I would keep the evidence, hold it close, and let it sink in. I needed time to process what I had just discovered, but I also knew that there was no going back. The truth had been revealed, and there was no erasing what I had seen. I could have called Emma immediately, but I needed a plan. I wasn't going to give her the chance to spin her own version of events. I wasn't going to let her lie to my face anymore. The next few hours felt like an eternity. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions. I had so many questions, so many thoughts swirling around, but I kept coming back to one idea. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. The day I decided to confront Emma was not one that I will ever forget. The weight of the decision hung over me like a cloud, but I knew it had to happen. I could not let this betrayal fester any longer. The moment of truth was here, and I was ready to face whatever came next. I waited for her to return home, pacing around the house in a mix of anger, hurt, and determination. I had the phone with me, still carrying all the incriminating messages. The evidence was undeniable, and I knew this was my only leverage. But as the hours passed and the front door finally creaked open, my heart skipped a beat. This was the moment I had been dreading, yet knew was necessary. Emma walked into the living room, looking tired, as though she had been through her own emotional roller coaster that day. She greeted me with a forced smile, but I could tell something was off. She knew that I knew, though I had not said a word yet. Her unease was palpable, but she tried to brush it off as if everything was normal. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I held up her phone, locking eyes with her as I showed her the messages that had shattered my world. It was silent in the room, except for the sound of my voice as I asked, "How long?" Her face drained of color. For a moment, she looked lost, as if she had no idea how to respond. I had seen her nervous before, but never like this. She stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. She was caught, and she knew it. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not what you think." I shook my head, not wanting to hear her excuses. There was no denying what I'd seen. There was no way she could talk her way out of this. The messages were clear, and the affair had gone on for far too long. I could feel my anger rising again. How could she look me in the eye and try to justify her actions? I asked again, this time more forcefully, "How long, Emma?" Her eyes welled up with tears as she took a step back. She was breaking down, and I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. There was no real apology in her eyes. Not yet. She had not yet realized the weight of what she had done, or maybe she had and was trying to avoid confronting it. "It started months ago," she said, her voice cracking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant for it to go this far." I laughed bitterly. The audacity of her words was almost too much to bear. She had no idea how deeply this had cut me, how her betrayal had shaken me to my core. I couldn't look at her without feeling sick. The woman I thought I knew had shattered every ounce of trust one had built over the years. But then, something unexpected happened. She didn't just cry or plead for forgiveness, as I had expected. She began to justify her actions. She spoke of how she felt neglected, how she felt unappreciated, how the affair had started as a mistake that turned into something more. She blamed me, saying that I was too focused on work and that I had pushed her away. As she continued, I felt a mix of disbelief and rage. How could she be standing there, still try to paint herself as the victim in all of this? I had given her my trust, my love, and she had torn it all apart for some fleeting excitement. The idea that she could try to manipulate the situation to make herself appear innocent only deepened my frustration. I told her, "This is not your mistake to blame on me. You made a choice. You chose him, over and over again. You chose to lie to my face." Her tears were genuine, but they felt hollow to me. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Not then. Maybe never. She had taken something from me that could never be given back, my trust. And without that, there was no relationship left. The foundation had crumbled beneath us, and no amount of apologies or excuses could rebuild it. But Emma wasn't finished. She continued to beg, to plead, to try to convince me that she could change, that she was sorry, that she was lost without me. The words were hollow. I couldn't hear them anymore. The pain of betrayal was too fresh, too raw. But amidst her pleas, something changed within me. It wasn't just that I wanted to end the relationship. It was that I finally saw the truth for what it was. I had been so afraid of the confrontation of the truth, but now that it was out in the open, I felt a strange sense of release. It was over, and I was going to be okay. I didn't know what was next. I didn't know where life would take me after this moment. But I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer willing to live in the shadow of someone else's lies. Emma had made her choices, and I would make mine. I told her, "I can't do this anymore. We're done." Her face crumpled as the words hit her. For the first time, I saw genuine remorse. But it was too late. The damage was done. She left the room, and I stood there, holding the phone, trying to grasp the finality of what had just happened. It felt like I was waking up from a nightmare I had been living in for too long. The emotional toll was heavy, but in that moment, I realized something important. This was the beginning of my freedom. The weight that had held me down for so long had been lifted, and now it was time to rebuild. The days that followed were nothing short of a whirlwind. As soon as Emma left that night, I felt an overwhelming sense of both relief and uncertainty. I had done what I had to do, and yet I found myself questioning everything that had led to that point. What went wrong? How had I missed the signs for so long? Could I have prevented this somehow? But despite the lingering questions, one thing became crystal clear to me. I had taken control of my own life again. I had stood up for myself, faced the harsh truth, and made a decision that would change everything. The pain was undeniable, but I knew that in time, I would heal. What hurt the most was not just the affair itself, but the realization that someone I trusted completely had been lying to me all along. The first few days after the confrontation were difficult. The house felt empty, and the silence was deafening. I spent hours pacing, trying to make sense of everything. But amidst the chaos of my thoughts, there was also a sense of calm. For the first time in years, I was free. I didn't have to constantly worry about her whereabouts, her lies, or her excuses. I could focus on myself, on healing, rebuilding, and moving forward. I decided to take a step back from the relationship and put all of my energy into what mattered most to me, my career. I had neglected my personal goals for far too long while trying to keep my marriage intact. I had let my job take a backseat in favor of trying to fix something that was broken beyond repair. But now it was time to refocus on my ambitions, my passions, and the things that truly brought me happiness. I began spending more time at the office, diving into work in a way I had not done in years. The energy I put into my projects, the attention to detail, and the newfound focus did not go unnoticed. My boss, who had always been supportive, recognized my dedication. I had been in the company for a few years, but I had never been in line for a promotion. That changed quickly after Emma's betrayal. I was given new responsibilities, trusted with higher-profile projects, and, eventually, promoted to a position I had only dreamed about. It was surreal. I had been so consumed by the pain of the betrayal that I almost missed the opportunity to grow. But life had a funny way of working out. With Emma out of the picture, I could now look at the world through a clearer lens. And as I climbed the professional ladder, I realized something profound. The end of one chapter doesn't have to mean the end of everything. Sometimes it's just the beginning of something new. As for Emma, the aftermath of our breakup was not what I had expected. For weeks after we parted ways, she tried reaching out, sending me texts, calling me, and even showing up at my workplace. She had apologized over and over, claiming that she had been lost and had made a mistake. But I was resolute. I had made peace with the situation, and I knew that reopening old wounds was not the solution. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. One day, I received a message from her asking to meet. My first instinct was to ignore it, but then I realized that I wasn't doing this for her. I was doing it for myself, to finally close the door on this chapter once and for all. So, I agreed to meet her, but only on my terms. When we sat down together, there was no anger, no bitterness. There was only a quiet understanding between us. She looked different, tired, emotionally drained. The weight of her own mistakes was evident in her eyes. She had no excuses left, no justifications to offer. All she could say was that she was sorry, and I, in turn, told her that I had already forgiven her. But that forgiveness didn't mean we would ever go back to what we once had. We parted ways that day with a sense of closure. It wasn't dramatic or filled with anger. It was simply the end of something that had never truly been right. I didn't need to hate her. I didn't need to carry any more bitterness. I needed to move on and find peace. A few months passed, and I settled into my new routine. I had learned so much from the experience, about myself, about relationships, and about what truly matters. It wasn't just about surviving the heartbreak. It was about learning to thrive in the aftermath. I found myself in a better place, emotionally, mentally, and even physically. I had reconnected with friends I had neglected over the years and found joy in the small things again. My life was moving forward, and I was no longer shackled by the past. Then, something unexpected happened. I met someone new. It started out as a casual meeting, a chance encounter at a friend's party. Her name was Sophie, and she was different from anyone I had ever met. She had a kindness and warmth that was impossible to ignore. And unlike Emma, Sophie didn't have any baggage or hidden agendas. She was genuine, straightforward, and honest. We hit it off instantly, and before long, we were spending a lot of time together. It wasn't love at first sight, but there was something undeniably special about Sophie. She made me feel like I could truly be myself again, without fear, without hesitation. And as we grew closer, I realized that I had found someone who valued honesty, trust, and loyalty just as much as I did. With Sophie, there was no baggage, no lies, no uncertainty, just two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company and cared deeply about each other. We built a foundation of trust and respect from the start, and it felt like everything I had gone through with Emma had prepared me for this new beginning. Looking back, I realized that everything had happened for a reason. The pain, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it had all been a catalyst for change. It had pushed me to take control of my life, to focus on my own growth, and to ultimately find the happiness that I deserved. Sometimes, we have to go through the storm to find the calm. And for me, That storm had been a turning point that led me to a much brighter future. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey of betrayal, healing, and self-discovery. If you found this story inspiring, or if you've ever experienced something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to know. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a new story.